Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, we set up our total project. So now I want to work for our authentication. And for the authentication, as I told you before, Django already provided some of the table. That means here you can see that is our user table. And into the user table, if you go to that user, and into the user here, you can see that is the username field, the password field, and also they have the another field as a first name, the last name, and email address. So right now I want to create one of the registration page first, and for the registration here, if you want to use that username, password, the first name, last name, email address, all the field is already ready-made into the Django admin area. So I have already migrated this table. So now I want to use this. So here with this here I want to take some of the field, like here I want to take one of the field as a username, and for the registration I want to take as a password and the email address. And also if you want to add that first name, that last name field, you can also defining it. So right now for doing this we have to work in our model, right? So now go to our project directory. So that is our project directory. So right now we don't need this. I just remove everything from here. Okay, I just remove everything from here. And now for doing this, we have to go to our project, into the project. So that is our application, into the application, that is our model. So we have to define our model, right? So if you want to create this model, then what exactly we have to do? So in our previous section, I have already discussed about that things with you. For our database, we have created some of the table. So we can create this table, all the things from to this model. So right now I have already by default one of the database table as user. So into the users table, they have already all that field. So now I want to do first of all use it. So if you want to use it, we have to first of all import our authentication model. So they have also one of the authentication model is ready-made. So now I want to call it, like I just simply define that from and the Django, then the contrib. Okay, done the contrib, and then they have also one of the authentication models. So I just simply call it as auth and the models. So from our authentication model, I want to import one of the model as a user. Okay, friend. So that is actually by default already ready-made. So that is our authentication model. From the authentication model, input one of the model class as a user. So with this user, we will get our all that field. With this user, we will get our username field, password field, first name field, last name, and the email address. So right now I want to do only want to access our username and then email address and the password. And also if you want to define some of the external field, like right now they have the only this field. So if you want to add external field, like if you want to add that Facebook ID URL, if you want to add some of the profile picture, then you can also add that field. Okay, so how can do that work step by step, I will show you. So first of all, I want to take our all that users table, all that fields. So if you want to defining it, we have to define one of the class first. So I just simply define as a class. Everything will be very much clear. Don't worry about it. Just follow that step. So here I take one of the class name as a info profile or info. Okay. So I just name it as info. So I just create one of the class as a user info. And here what exactly we have to do? We have to define our models. And also into the model, we have to inherit it with our model class. So I just simply define as a model class, right? So that is our class name, and here we have to define our, I just take one of the variable as a user, and with this user I want to access all that our models, and into these models I want to define as a one-to-one field one of the relationship. Okay, so I just name it as a one-to-one field. So I just simply define one-to-one field, and here I want to input our model. There is a default model as a user, so I just simply pass it on here. So this relation will be as a one-to-one relation with our this class, that means the user info class, to our user model. So here I have already input our user. So in our user model, I want to recreate that relation. So with this user model, as I told you, with this user model, now we can actually access our all that field. So whatever the field you want to take, we can actually take it, right? And also after that, if you, as I told you, if you want to add some of the external field, like here I want to take one of the external field as a Facebook ID. Okay, Facebook underscore ID, and here with these models, with these models you have to define, and Facebook ID means that will be as a URL type, so I have to define one of the type, so they have also one of the type as a URL. Okay, URL field, so I just name it as a URL field. And into this URL field, that means this, if you want to make this field as a nullable, then you can also defining it. So I just simply define one of the argument as a blank. Okay, I just make the things blank as a true. That means it will be as a nullable. And also I want to take another one. So if you want to add another table field as a profile for the profile picture, so I just name it as a profile. Okay, profile underscore picture. So I take another one, and that will be as an image type. So I just simply define as a models. So with these models, I want to define our type for the image. They have also one of the another type as an image field. So I just simply define as an image field. Okay, I just simply define as the image field. So I just simply define that image. And for the image here also you have to define that where exactly this image will be uploaded. Okay, so here also you have to define it. So I just simply define as upload. Upload to which location. Here also you have to define that location name. So I just simply define one of the location as a profile. Profile underscore pieces. Okay, I just name it as a pieces. And also I want to make that field as a blank. So I just simply define as a blank as a true. Okay, I just make that things as a blank true. Perfect. So friend, I hope you can well understand about it. So with this user model, we can actually access all that our default, all that field as a username field, password field, first name field, last name field, and the email address field. And also additionally, I add another two of this field. One is the Facebook ID, another is the profile picture. Okay, and Facebook ID, it will be one of the URL type. For the reasons here I define with these models. Into these models by default they have that is actually the Django model. So with this Django model library, I want to access one of the type as a URL field type, and I just make the things as a nullable. For the reasons I just pass some of the argument as a blank will be as a true. And also I take another field as a profile picture. So with these models I want to define our type for the image, because profile picture will be one of the image type. So for the reasons here I have defined one of the image type as the image field, and this image will be uploaded a specific some of the folder name I have defined as a profile pieces, and I also make that field as a nullable, right? I think everything is very much clear to you. And also here I define as if image will be uploaded one of this folder, that means the profile picture folder. So now we have to create this folder. So for creating this in our project directory, that means in our second project, into the second project I want to create one of the folder, and I just name this folder as a media. Okay, I just name it as a media folder, and into the media folder here I want to create another new folder, and this folder name will be just like that. That means this folder name. So into the media folder I want to create another folder, and I just name it as a profile piece. Okay, so now I just simply save it. So that is our profile piece. That means all that our images will be saved in particular that position, that means here. And also for defining all that our CSS and the JSS, for the reasons in our previous section I have already discussed about that things with you. In our previous section we have created one of the static folder, right? So now for this project I want to create another static folder. So in our second project area I just simply define as a new folder, and I just name this folder name I define as a static. Okay, I just name it as a static. So I just simply defining it. So now we have to also add this static in our setting, right friend? I think you already remember it. So that is our setting, and into the setting area we have to defining it in particular that area, that means in our OS area. So I just simply name it as a static underscore directory. Okay, that means the static directory, and here I define that OS, because we have to also join it. So I just simply define OS path, and then join with our base directory, and here we have to also define our folder name. So our folder I have defined that name as a static, right? So I just simply define as a static. And also I have created another one as a media. So for the media I have to also include it in our OS area. So now I just name it as a media underscore directory, and then in our os dot path, and then join our base directory. And here also we have to define our folder name. I have created one of the folder as a media, so I just name it as a media, right? And now also we have to add two of this. We have to add two of this in our CSS area. So here we actually did that. I think you already remember it. So you can see that is all the CSS and the JavaScript and the images, all the things we have to include it on here. So first of all, I want to define our static directory. That means here we have to define that our static files. Okay, static files, and in the static files I name it as a directory dirs, right? And then in particular that position we have to pass our this variable. So here I take that variable, that is actually our static directory. So I just simply defining it on here, that is our static directory. Okay friend, and also we have to add our media. So here also after that we have to add that media. So better I just put some of the note for you, that will be as a media. Okay, that will be as a media. And in the media directory here we have to define as a media, okay, media underscore root. So into the media root here we have to define our media directory, and also into the media directory area we have to pass our folder name as a media underscore URL. Our URL will be in our that position as a, this will be as a media. So I just simply define that media. Okay, so make that sure you add your all that static folder, that is a static folder I have created, and also I have created another folder as a media. So I also added our media, and also I added two of these in our OS area. So that is actually our OS. In the OS I have defined two of this. That means I have joined our base URL. With this base URL I have joined our static, this folder name, and the media folder name. So now go to our model again. That means in our logging app, and to the logging app, that is our models. Into this models area I want to add one of the string. So I just take one of the string, space double line, that is double underscore, and then string, and then double underscore, and here I define that string as a self. So that is our self, and here I want to return our this self. Into the self here I want to return our this user. Okay, so here I want to define that user, and that is here I have defined our one-to-one field, one of the relationship, and in particular that position I want to define our user, that means our user model. So into the user model area I want to define our username, that means that is actually our user, that means this user model, and also here I define our user name. So whatever the things we will define that in our username area, so we will actually access this username with our this user. Okay, and also here I define as a one-to-one field. So here if you want to define this type of conditions, when this user will be deleted, automatically this user related all that our Facebook ID or the profile picture will be deleted. Okay, so if you want to define this type of thing condition, in our previous section I have already discussed about that things with you. So now also you can define it, like I just name it as a on delete, right, on delete, and then with these models you have to define as a cascade. So with this cascade, as I told you, when this user will be deleted, this user related all that Facebook ID the information, that means the URL and also profile will be deleted. So I just simply define as a cascade. So that is our on delete. So with this on delete, with this model I define that cascade. Perfect. And also friend, here I'm using that image field, right? So here we will upload the images for the, if you want to use that image, then you have to install one of the package. So right now they have also in Django they have one of the package. So right now I just cart it, I just open our terminal and go to our project directory first as a cd, and then my second project, and here I want to install one of the package for the images. And if you want to install it, they have also one of the command line as a pip and then install. Okay, pip install and the pillow. So that is actually the pillow, one of the package. So this package, if you want to working with the images, then you have to install it. So that is actually the command as a pip install and the pillow. Now click as a enter, and then it should be downloaded all that file from the internet. Make that sure you are connected to the internet. It should be downloading and install it in your system. And here you can see, friend, it's now showing as a requirement already satisfied. That means I have already installed it. So for the reasons it's actually showing that things as a requirement already satisfied, rather than it should be downloaded all that file from to the internet. So I have already installed it. For the reasons actually it's now showing like that way, that is the requirements already satisfied. And then our next procedure will be here. I have defined that model, so that is our class as a user info. So now we have to do here web using the default one, right? That means default admin. Into the admin they have already all the things. So now we have to register it. So if you want to register it, then you have to go to your application. That means the logging application. Into the logging application, that is our admin pie. And into the admin pie area, you have to do, first of all, here you have to load it. That means the import it. So I just simply define as a form, and then our application, that means our logging application, into the logging app, and that is our models, right? So now I want to do, and first of all load it. So here I define as a logging application, that means the logging app, into the logging app, that is our models. So I just simply define as the models, and then I want to import what? So from our logging application, that is our models, into this models I have created this class as a user info. So now I have to register it. So now I just simply copy it, and now in our admin here I import our this user info class, right? So now I want to register it. So you can see they have also some of the comment as a register your model here. So now I want to register it in particular that position, that is the admin, and the side, into the admin side we have to register, and here I have to register it. So that is our user info. So in particular that position I want to register it. Okay friends, so make that sure you registered it, and after that we have to migrate it again. So now I just click as a save all, because of all in our models area I have already defined some of the fields, right? So now I have already added some of the fields. So now we have to migrate it. So if you want to migrate it, I think you already know about it. So in particular that folder, that means in our second project. So here I want to define as a migrate as a phi, and the manage dot phi, and the migrate. Now click as a enter. Now you can see it's now showing as invalid syntax in our this self, that means in our models. Into the models here you can see I didn't define that colon, so here you have to define that colon. Okay, so it is very much helpful. You can see when you actually get any error, automatically it will be display this error. It identify that here I'm missing that column, so you can see it's now perfectly now showing. So I just updated it. Now click as a save all again, and now I want to run it again. So that is actually the phi and the manage phi dot migrate. Click on the enter, and also here showing as a return self user, they have the unexpected this indented block. So in particular that area, so here you have to define these things on here. Okay, so that is actually expected some of the blocks, so I just simply defining it on here. So now let's check this out again. So if you actually face some of the error, then you will learn it. Okay, so here I have actually missing it, and also I have defined some of the spaces on here. So for the reasons here we have to pass that things appropriate that position. So I just simply pass it, and now let's check this out again. I just click as a save all again, migrate it again, click on the enter. Yes, now you can see it's now perfectly migrated. And after that our second client, so our second line I think you already know about it as a pie, and that manage dot pie, and that make migrations, and then we have to define our application name. Our application name as a logging, right? Logging underscore app. So I just simply define as a PHP manage.py, and that make migrations and the logging app. Click on the enter. Yeah, you can see it's now successfully generated our this user model. That means the user model I have created as a user info, it's now successfully created this model. And now also after that we have to run our migrate again. That means the phi, manage phi, and the migrate. Click on the enter. Now everything is perfect. So now I want to check it. So for checking this we have to run our site. So I just simply define as a py, and that manage.py, and then run server. Click on the enter. Our server is now running. Now go to our site, and here right now I want to refresh our admin again. Now go to our home. Yes, now you can see that is actually our logging app, and here I have created one of the migration table that is actually our user info, right? So if you now open that user info, click on the add new, here you can see that is actually the user. So that is all that user will be visible, and that is I have defined that Facebook, one of the field, that means the Facebook ID, and also I define another field name, and that is actually our picture, right? So that is our profile picture. Perfect. So that is the all that field I have defined in our model. So if you now open this model again, now it should be very much clear to you. So here that is our all that user, and I have created our Facebook ID, and that is another field as a profile picture. And also you can see into the screen position I have defined our user, and into the user I pass our username, right? So now I think you can all understand about it. You can see that is the user, and into this user here it's passing that username. Okay, so for the reasons here I have actually defined this string. So that is our user. Into this user model area it should be passed our this username. So now you can see it's now showing our username, and that is our Facebook ID and the profile picture. So now I want to create one of the page for our registration, and into the registration area I want to load our form. Okay, so how can do that work? In our next video I will show you that things with the live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.